everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. You know how this works. You bring us the interesting stuff, and we bring in the experts to break it all down.
Exactly.
And today, we're diving into Circular Protocol. This is a layer 1 blockchain that caught your eye, and you sent us a ton of material on it.
Yeah, it looks like we've got white papers, articles, even some marketing materials here.
That's right. We've been going through it all to make sure this deep dive is tailored just for you. And let me tell you this, Circular Protocol. It's pretty fascinating stuff.
Definitely some interesting concepts in here.
We're talking parallel, multi-chain architecture, smart contracts running on GPUs. They're even aiming at blockchain solutions for healthcare.
Ambitious.
Very ambitious. But before we get into the nuts and bolts, I want to introduce the expert who's been helping me analyze all of this material. So what were your first impressions when you started looking at Circular Protocol? Anything jump out at you right away from like a technical perspective?
Well, the first thing that really caught my eye was how much they're focusing on DeFi healthcare, all those really heavily regulated industries. It's not just about trying to be the next big thing in cryptocurrency. It seems like they're trying to build trust and compliance in areas that really need it.
Okay, so let's break this down a bit for our listener, Desak. I get that it has something to do with science, but how does blockchain technology fit into all of this?
Well, think about it this way. Blockchain tech offers a really secure and transparent way to track information.
Okay.
So when we talk about DeFi, we're talking about using blockchain to store research data in a secure way, making funding more accessible, and even protecting intellectual property.
Ah, I see. So it's all about using blockchain to kind of change the way scientific research happens, make it more open and collaborative. That's really cool. Now, what about healthcare? I'm still trying to wrap my head around how blockchain fits into that world.
Yeah, that's where things get really interesting. Just imagine all of your sensitive medical records stored securely on a blockchain, only accessible with your permission. No more paper files, no more data scattered across different providers.
Wow. Okay, I can definitely see the appeal there. It's like having a digital vault for all your health information, and you're the only one with the key. That sounds way better than the current system, where it feels like every other week there's another data breach or privacy violation.
Yeah, exactly. And on top of personal health records, Circular Protocol could totally revolutionize clinical trials.
Okay, how so?
Well, imagine researchers from different institutions all working together on a clinical trial, but all the data is stored and tracked securely on a blockchain.
That would be incredible. No more worrying about whether the data is accurate or someone's fudging the numbers. Plus, it would speed up the whole process of sharing findings.
Right, exactly.
But would that be a logistical nightmare? Trying to coordinate between all those different parties and making sure the patient's privacy is protected?
Well, that's where Circular's multi-chain architecture comes in. They can have private chains for managing all that sensitive patient data, making sure they're complying with regulations like IPA. But at the same time, they can use public chains for sharing the research findings and collaborating with other researchers.
So they're kind of hitting both sides of the coin there. They've got the privacy covered, but they're also making sure the research process is open and transparent. I like it. So we've got this multi-chain architecture that keeps things organized. But how do they actually manage all of this? Wouldn't it get super complicated trying to keep everything running smoothly with all these different chains?
Well, that's where their sharding system comes in.
Okay.
So instead of having this one giant blockchain trying to do everything, Circular divides its network into these smaller, more manageable pieces called shards.
Shards, okay.
Yeah, you can almost think of it like having specialized teams within a company. Each team handles a specific part of a project. This sharding allows for incredible scalability, which means the network can handle a ton of transactions without sacrificing speed or efficiency.
Got it. So by breaking things down into smaller chunks, they can process information way faster. Okay, that makes sense. But how does this sharding system address the whole blockchain trilemma thing? You know, the whole balancing act between scalability, security, and decentralization. It seems like there's always some kind of trade-off there.
Yeah, that's the classic blockchain challenge, isn't it?
Right.
Well, Circular sharding actually allows nodes with different performance levels to participate. So even someone running a node on a Raspberry Pi can contribute to the network.
So you're telling me it's not just for the big players with their massive server farms?
Yeah.
Anyone can get involved.
That's the idea. It's all about being inclusive.
I like that.
Yeah.
But what about security? Doesn't dividing the network into all these shards make it more vulnerable to attacks?
That's a valid concern for sure. But Circular addresses that with a two-pronged approach. So first they use a sustainable hashing method where only one node actually finalizes a block at a time. Okay, this helps boost security. And second, they have this really interesting consensus mechanism called proof of reputation.
Proof of reputation, I've never heard of that. What is that?
Basically, it encourages nodes to behave well by rewarding them for consistent, reliable contributions to the network.
Because it's not just about who has the most powerful computer, it's about building a good reputation within the network.
Yeah,
I'm guessing there are perks that come with having a good reputation.
absolutely. Nodes with higher reputation scores get certain privileges within the circular ecosystem. Think increased voting power in governance decisions or priority access to new features.
So it's like a whole little society in there.
In a way, yeah, and it creates a more collaborative and secure environment overall.
I can see that. All right, so far we've got this super scalable, secure, and efficient blockchain platform with this really interesting reputation system. But how does Circular actually handle the whole smart contract side of things? You mentioned something about superpowered smart contracts running on GPUs earlier.
Oh yeah, that's Hypercode. It's Circular's virtual machine that allows them to run these smart contracts. But what makes it really special is that it can tap into the power of GPUs. Those are the same processors that are used for gaming.
Wait a minute, GPUs like the ones in video game consoles, what are they doing in a blockchain?
Exactly. And by using GPUs, Hypercode can handle much more complex computations, especially in fields like healthcare, where you're dealing with massive amounts of data and running complex simulations.
Okay, so we're talking about speeding up medical research, drug discovery, even personalized medicine. This is pretty mind-blowing stuff.
It has a lot of potential, that's for sure.
Okay, I need to take a breath for a second to process all this. But before we get ahead of ourselves, you mentioned that Hypercode can run in two different modes, right? Something about interpreted and compiled. Can you break that down for us? What's the difference between those two?
Sure, you got it. So it's kind of like having different tools for different jobs. Think of interpreted mode like translating a book one sentence at a time. It's good for simpler contracts and gives you more flexibility. Compiled mode, on the other hand, is like translating the entire book at once. It's much faster for those really complex operations, but you need to do more work up front.
So if I'm understanding correctly, interpreted mode is kind of like riding a bike. It's good for short trips, easy to maneuver. Compiled mode is more like driving a sports car. Super powerful and fast, but maybe not the best choice for a crowded city street.
That's a great analogy.
I try. And Circular gives developers the freedom to choose which mode works best for them, depending on what they're trying to do.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got this incredibly scalable, secure, efficient blockchain platform with these super-powered smart contracts. But let's be real for a second. Most of our listeners are probably thinking, oh, okay, this all sounds really cool, but what's in it for me? How does all of this actually translate into real-world benefits, especially when it comes to healthcare?
That's the million-dollar question. And that's actually a perfect place to pick things up in the next part of our deep dive. We're going to explore some of the most promising use cases for circular protocol in healthcare. Everything from managing medical records and streamlining clinical trials to tracking pharmaceuticals and verifying credentials. It's going to get really interesting.
I cannot wait. We'll be back in a flash to continue our deep dive into circular protocol.